Rain Brown once represented hope, youth, and resilience in a family built on survival. But today, her name is making headlines for reasons no one could have predicted. From the heart of the Alaskan wilderness to the cold walls of a courtroom, her story has taken a dark, unforeseen detour. Arrested with her husband, the youngest member of the Brown family now finds herself at the center of a legal storm that's left longtime fans speechless. It's not just a twist in the plot, it's a full-blown reckoning. On April 11, 2025, Rain Brown and her husband Josiah Lorton were taken into custody in Okanogan County, Washington. The charges: first-degree burglary and first-degree malicious mischief, both felony. Rain also faced an additional count of criminal trespass. Authorities allege the couple broke into a private property and caused extensive damage. The full details of what went on inside remain sealed, but what's confirmed is enough to shake anyone familiar with Rain's once innocent image. Evidence was found, witnesses spoke, and just like that, the narrative around Rain began to unravel. Seeing her in custody felt like watching a fairy tale crumble in slow motion. For years, she'd been the gentle, wide-eyed girl on Alaskan Bush People, braving the wilderness with quiet courage. Now, viewers were forced to confront a much harsher version of reality. She was booked and held for 3 days, released without bail on April 14. Some questioned whether her clean record played a role in the court's leniency. Others wondered if the charges were more complex than they appeared. But no one could ignore the shadows gathering around her. The response from the public was deeply divided. Some leapt to her defense, convinced there had to be a misunderstanding. Others pointed to a noticeable shift in Rain's behavior over recent years. Social media absences, emotional posts, strange captions, clues that something was wrong long before her name appeared in a police report. This wasn't just a scandal. It was the unmasking of a deeper crisis, one that had been quietly building behind her brave front. Then, breaking news landed just moments ago, confirming what many had feared. This case isn't a standalone incident. It's the eruption of years of inner conflict and silent suffering that Rain had kept hidden from the world. And the more you learn, the more your heart aches. Long before police sirens ever pierced the quiet of that Washington town, Rain was in trouble. Beneath her public smile was a storm few could see. At 15, she had already begun opening up about her struggles with depression. It was a brave move, one that earned her support, but also exposed just how much pain she was carrying. She entered therapy, trying to find clarity in a world that made little sense to her, but the signs kept appearing. Her Instagram posts grew cryptic and emotionally raw. She called herself a lost soul, disappearing for weeks from social media without a word. To outsiders, it might have seemed like teenage angst, but to those paying attention, it was a quiet cry for help. Living in isolation, juggling fame, and missing out on the support systems most teens take for granted, Rain was slipping into a darkness that fame couldn't illuminate. Her attempts to express herself through poetry and art were often powerful, but also unsettling. She talked about wearing a smile like armor, about hiding her pain behind hope-filled captions, and slowly, the line between who she was and what the world expected of her began to blur. Experts say emotional trauma doesn't always show itself in dramatic ways. Sometimes it builds quietly until it explodes. And in Rain's case, many now wonder if the choices she made were driven more by pain than intent. But perhaps the most devastating blow of all came in February 2021. That's when Rain's father, Billy Brown, the heart and soul of the Brown family, passed away suddenly after a seizure at their North Star Ranch. For Rain, this wasn't just a tragic event. It was a collapse of everything stable in her life. Billy had always been her anchor, her protector, her compass through chaos. Losing him wasn't just grief, it was disorientation. In the days that followed, Rain posted tributes filled with heartbreak. "I don't know who I am without you," she wrote to her father. The light in her eyes dimmed. Her social media presence became sporadic. On the show, her once bubbly presence faded into silence. Insiders say she was consumed by a grief so deep, she struggled to function. Depression tightened its grip, and with Billy gone, the family structure began to shift. Sibling tensions rose, the sense of unity fractured, and Rain, already emotionally fragile, seemed to be drifting further from the shore. For those who knew her story, the arrest wasn't just about a crime. It was about a cry, a sign that something inside had broken long before the law got involved. What remains now is a girl caught between two worlds, one where she was adored as a child of nature, and one where she's fighting to find her place in a world that's moved on. And as her story unfolds, one question remains impossible to ignore. Can Rain Brown still find her way back? Because this isn't just a fall from grace, it's a story still being written. The death of Billy Brown didn't just leave a void, it detonated something in Rain's world that no one was prepared for. She wasn't just grieving a father, she was trying to navigate the emotional wreckage of a life that had been pulled out from under her. For someone who'd grown up surrounded by cameras and expectations, suddenly finding herself without her father's steady hand was like being cut adrift in stormy water. Fans who'd watched her grow up could sense something shifting. There was a weight behind her eyes, a silence between posts, an eerie change that hinted something was deeply, irreversibly broken. And just when Rain needed a steady anchor, that's exactly what she lost. The shock of Billy's passing didn't just strip away her support system, it exposed her to a world where everyone seemed to want something, where the boundary between friend and opportunist blurred beyond recognition. Rain, still in the throes of mourning, became increasingly reclusive, retreating further from her family and deeper into herself. Behind the scenes, she wrestled with decisions she wasn't ready to make, emotions she couldn't untangle, and people she shouldn't have trusted. One poor choice led to another, and soon, Rain wasn't just grieving, she was spiraling. Fans watched helplessly as each update seemed to suggest a young woman losing control of her own story. But Rain didn't disappear entirely. What emerged instead was something unexpected, a relationship that would change the course of her life. It came seemingly out of nowhere, without fanfare, without family approval, and certainly without the glossy packaging her public had grown used to. His name was Josiah Lorton, and if you've never heard of him, that's precisely the point. He wasn't a survivalist, not a TV personality. He came from outside the spotlight, and that anonymity became both intriguing and troubling. Josiah's background remains a puzzle even now. That mystery fueled speculation, raising eyebrows across fan forums and online tabloids. What was clear, though, was that Josiah entered Rain's life at a time when she was emotionally vulnerable and desperate for connection. Their bond, formed quietly behind closed doors, took shape in whispers rather than declaration. Rain posted sparingly about him, brief captions, blurry photos, nothing that painted a full picture. Some fans called it romantic, saying Rain was finally keeping something for herself, but others feared this silence wasn't protection, it was a red flag. By 2024, Rain confirmed what few saw coming. She had married Josiah in secret. The bombshell announcement wasn't just shocking, it was telling. None of her siblings had attended. Not a single post from the Brown family congratulated her. Something was deeply fractured behind the scenes. This wasn't just about love, it was a statement, a breakaway from her past. A young woman trying to carve out something new, even if it was built from the rubble of her grief. But the honeymoon didn't last. Their life together, as insiders would later reveal, was far from stable. There were no network contracts, no production teams, no sprawling wilderness mansion. Rain and Josiah lived a nomadic life, hopping between temporary rentals, surviving on odd jobs, scraping by in a way that felt uncomfortably raw for someone who once lived in the curated world of reality TV. Financial pressure mounted, emotional strain deepened, and behind closed doors, what started as a refuge may have turned into another storm. Then came April 2025. The news hit like a lightning bolt. Rain and Josiah had been arrested. Burglary, trespassing, malicious mischief. The charges were as jarring as they were heartbreaking. For fans who had followed Rain since childhood, it felt surreal. How had things fallen so far, so fast? Many pointed directly to her relationship. What once looked like a lifeline now seemed like an anchor, pulling her further under. Still, even as headlines spun out of control, Rain chose to speak. But she didn't lash out at strangers or deny the legal accusations outright. She turned her fury towards someone far more personal, her former manager. The revelation came not through a press conference, but through an emotionally raw Instagram post that shook her fan base. She didn't mince words. She claimed betrayal, theft, manipulation. She alleged that the same person who had once handled her career had stolen over $43,000 and now turned the legal system against her. "It hurts my heart," she wrote, her words directed at the very audience that once adored her. "That my rainbows would believe lies from someone who abused me instead of stopping to think, wait, Who's really behind this? She didn't beg for pity. She asked for patience. Rain urged her followers to wait for her truth, to look beyond the noise and see the human underneath it all. And in one final pointed statement, she quoted the Bible. "Judge not, lest ye be judged." The post stirred a whirlwind of reactions. Some fans rallied around her, remembering the young girl who had once lived in the Alaskan wild. Wide-eyed and innocent, they believed she'd been preyed upon, caught in a web of grief, manipulation, and betrayal. Others, more skeptical, questioned the timing. Was she deflecting? Was this a calculated move before her court date? Opinions were divided, but the fire had been lit. It began as a legal scandal had now exploded into something far more complex, a portrait of a young woman caught between trauma and trust, survival and scandal. But just as the world tried to make sense of Rain's accusations against her manager, an even more disturbing crack emerged, not from strangers or outsiders, but from the very heart of the Brown family. The fractures that had long been whispered about were now threatening to surface in public. The story that started with a daughter's grief was beginning to unravel into a much darker tale of family silence, emotional collapse, and the haunting question: how much does the world really know about Rain Brown's truth? Rain Brown was once the wild spirit of the Brown family, the untamed energy that made Alaskan Bush people feel alive. But behind the cameras, something far more complex was unraveling. As 2024 rolled in, so did the darkness. Legal petition from her own brother Noah and his wife Rain shattered the illusion of family unity. Court filings weren't just harsh, they were alarming. Noah claimed his sister had crossed dangerous lines: harassment, erratic threats, and spiraling addiction. A string of alleged incidents hinted at something deeply fractured within Rain's world. One remark reportedly made in an elevator chilled many: "Life would be easier if you were dead." That sentence wasn't from a script. It was a brother recounting a real moment. Viewers who had grown up watching the Browns couldn't believe what they were hearing. This the same Rain they'd rooted for when she was struggling with depression? The girl who once symbolized resilience after her father's death? Tragic incident involving a horse where Rain allegedly dismissed help and declared she'd take its life herself became a haunting symbol of how far things had gone. Noah's petition requested that Rain surrender multiple firearms and stay away from his children. And yet, the judge denied the temporary restraining order, citing procedural gaps and insufficient immediacy. It was like watching a disaster in slow motion, one where the red flags had been waving for years. Then came Rain's reaction, raw and unapologetic. She posted on Instagram, slamming the hypocrisy of those demanding perfection from someone who never pretended to be flawless. "Why do I have to pretend I don't know what the F word is?" she wrote, anger barely veiled behind her words. That post wasn't an apology. It was a declaration of war on every expectation and every critic who wanted her to be someone else. She hinted at a deeper story yet to be told. "Keep asking that question," she said, teasing a potential memoir. But instead of clarity, it only added to the mystery and suspicion. What began as a social media storm soon grew into something far more serious. The burglary case she faced earlier in 2025 suddenly looked different in the context of her brother's allegations. People stopped asking whether Rain had been set up, started wondering whether her actions reflected a deeper pattern. Online, the tide was shifting. Comment cut deep: "She's no saint. She's not even the same Rain we thought we knew." That's the power of repetition. One accusation, you question. You get uneasy. But when it's family, and when the stories sound more and more unhinged, the doubt becomes belief. And then, confirmation. Part fans weren't ready for. After weeks of eerie silence, it was official. Rain Brown had been sentenced. Whether through a plea deal or direct conviction, sources close to the case confirmed that Rain's fate had been sealed behind courtroom doors. Though the exact details remain sealed, what's undeniable is this: Rain didn't walk away. She didn't beat the case. The girl who once roamed the Alaskan wilderness freely is now carrying the heavy weight of a criminal judgment. The fallout was immediate. Social media lit up with grief, anger, and disbelief. The most loyal fans tried to find a thread of redemption, blaming mental health, grief, even fame itself. But others saw it differently, felt betrayed, and they weren't quiet about it. "She was the sunshine," one post read, "but maybe we ignored the clouds for too long." That line hurt, because it captured what many felt. This wasn't just a celebrity scandal. It was a tragedy unfolding in real time. Now Rain's future is cloaked in uncertainty. Legal experts suggest jail time is possible, depending on the final sealed judgment. Even if she avoids incarceration, her career is effectively over. Networks don't gamble on controversy like this, not when weapons, threats, and drugs are involved. The chances of her returning to television? Nearly zero. What's left now is a quiet path ahead, away from the cameras, the fan pages, and the brand deals that once seemed within reach. And while her future might seem uncertain, one thing about her past is crystal clear. Rain Brown lived fast. She didn't just inherit fame. She tried to outrun it, break it, and rebuild it on her own terms. And along the way, she built a lifestyle that few could dream of. Rain, at her peak, drove a matte black Range Rover and was often spotted in a Mercedes G-Class, blending wilderness edge with Beverly Hills glam. Her watch collection included a rose gold Rolex Yachtmaster and a Cartier Panthère, which fans speculated were gifts from producers during the show's highest-rated seasons. She owned 2 remote mountain cabins and had a stake in the family's Washington property, once valued at nearly $1.8 million. Her brief flirtation with entrepreneurship included launching a limited outdoor gear line, and rumors swirled about her investing in a cannabis startup. She also maintained comprehensive insurance policies, including high-value asset coverage and a mental health rider that protected her earnings during periods of emotional instability. The lesson? Wealth doesn't guarantee stability. It does magnify every high and every fall. Looking back, her evolution is hard to reconcile. From the fearless young girl surviving in the wild to a woman facing a courtroom, Rain's story is no longer just one of survival. It's a cautionary tale, a reminder that sometimes the wildest storms come from within. For now, Rain disappears into the shadows, her voice replaced by court documents and cryptic posts. The silence she leaves behind is deafening. Is this the final chapter of Rain Brown's public life? Just the beginning of something even more unpredictable? Time will tell. But one thing is certain: whatever future she chooses, she'll face it not as a reality star, but as a woman shaped by pain, mistakes, and the very public unraveling of a legacy. What a wild ride that was. From courtroom drama and shocking family betrayals to luxury lifestyles and massive falls from grace, Rain Brown's story has taken us through every twist imaginable. We saw her go from the beloved free spirit on Alaskan Bush People to a figure caught in a whirlwind of accusations, heartbreak, and headlines. Her recent sentencing might have closed one chapter, but the questions it leaves behind, oh, they're just beginning. So what's next for Rain? Will she bounce back and rewrite her story? Or is this truly the final curtain call? We'll be watching closely, and you know we'll keep you updated every step of the way. If you found this story as jaw-dropping as we did, go ahead and smash that like button. Got thoughts? The comment section is wide open. We're dying to hear what you think about Rain's downfall. And don't forget to subscribe, because next week, we're diving into a Hollywood icon scandal that shook Beverly Hills to its core. Until then, remember, fame may shine bright, but even stars can burn out. Stay curious, stay kind, and never underestimate what's hiding behind the spotlight. Thanks for watching, and hey, maybe Rain will write that book one day. If she does, you know we'll be the first to crack it open.